U.S. just approved the largest weapons package in Taiwan's history. Taiwan's own parliament blocked it 10 times. The party that blocked it just flew to Beijing and shook hands with Xi Jinping. Same week. You remember 2015, that photo, Taiwan's leader and Xi, Singapore, flashbulbs everywhere. First time in 66 years. Everyone said history was changing. 1 year later, that party got crushed at the ballot box. Beijing didn't read that signal. Or they did. And this time, they're playing it differently. Fast forward to today. Same photo, different game. Here's what's actually happening. April 10th, 2026, KMT Chairwoman Cheng Li-wun flies to Beijing, meets Xi Jinping. First time in 9 years, these two parties sat down together. At the same time, Taiwan's parliament, controlled by the KMT, is blocking the largest defense budget in the island's history. 10 times, back to back. Washington is loud about it. Beijing is quiet. And in the middle, 23 million people getting pulled in opposite directions. Before we go further, you need to know who these two parties are, because if you don't, none of what comes next makes sense. The KMT opposition party controls parliament. One core belief: better to do business than go to war. They think a working relationship with Beijing beats confrontation. The DPP ruling party holds the presidency. Opposite belief: we are Taiwan, not China. Keep Beijing at arm's length. Stay close to Washington. Two parties, two visions, one island. And right now they are pulling it apart from the inside. Here's why this isn't someone else's problem. Taiwan makes over 90% of the world's most advanced chips. The chip in the phone you're holding right now, the chip in your car, the chip in the ventilator at your nearest hospital. All of it flows through that island. If that strait changes hands by force or by ballot, the price you pay isn't a distant war. It's the price of everything. 6 institutions, 12 years of data, one pattern, none of them connected to each other. Here it is. Beijing doesn't need to talk to Taiwan's government. They just need to talk to the party that controls the parliament. There's a reason this meeting happened right now, this specific week, and that reason, it's not about peace. Here's what the headlines keep missing. China doesn't need to talk to Taiwan's president, Lai Ching-te, DPP. Beijing refuses completely. No hotline, no back channel, but they don't need one, because the people actually controlling Taiwan's policy right now aren't sitting in the presidential office. They're sitting in parliament, and that parliament is KMT. President Lai proposed the largest defense budget in Taiwan's history, $40 billion. Long-range missiles, multi-layer air defense, combat drones. Washington backed it. Taiwan needed it. KMT blocked it. Once, twice, 3 times, all the way to 10. A U.S. senator on the Armed Services Committee posted it straight. It doesn't take a genius to figure out what's going on here. He's right. But he's still missing the deeper move. The KMT is not betraying Taiwan. They're playing an election. 2028 Taiwan votes for a new president. KMT wants that seat back. And their message to voters is simple. The DPP is dragging you into a war. Washington wants not a war you want. We can negotiate. We just sat with Xi. We're the ones bringing peace home. But here's where it gets strange. A poll from March, 56% of Taiwanese said this Beijing visit would hurt the KMT at the ballot box. More than half. The KMT has a research operation. They saw that number. They knew this trip could cost them votes. And they went anyway. Ask why the KMT walked into a room they knew could hurt them. And the answer changes everything you just saw. There's a name behind all 3 of those patterns. 2 minutes. And it's not the name you're thinking. Most people watching this story are focused on 2 players, Washington and Beijing. The arms race, the warships, the military exercises. That's the surface. Here's what's actually underneath. It's not Washington causing Beijing's leverage. It's not Beijing directly weakening Taiwan's defense. There's something in the middle, something nobody's been reporting. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Washington's pressure strategy just handed Beijing its best political weapon in a decade. And Washington built it themselves. Without knowing, here's the chain. Washington pressures Taiwan spend more, arm up 10% of GDP on defense. That's Node A. Most people jump straight to Node B. Beijing wins, Taiwan weakens. But the jump skips the thing that actually makes this work. Node C. The KMT takes that American pressure and turns it into a domestic political weapon. Their message to Taiwanese voters: Washington is asking you to pay for their war. We're the ones saying no. We're protecting your wallet, not your enemy. Your defense against Washington's demands. That's Node C. And Beijing didn't create it. Washington did without knowing it, which should be impossible. The U.S. is arming Taiwan, and that move is giving the pro-Beijing party its best political argument in a decade. And yet here we are. Washington's move was supposed to strengthen Taiwan's hand against Beijing. Here's what it actually did. It handed the KMT a campaign slogan. Every $1 billion in weapons Washington pushed the KMT turned it into one more reason to tell Taiwanese voters, this isn't your war. And every time they said that, Beijing's position got stronger, not because Beijing did anything, because Washington handed them the argument for free. The day after the Beijing handshake, China announced 10 new measures for Taiwan. Resume flights, open tourism, expand trade, youth exchanges, no weapons, no threats, no military language. Just here are gifts for the Taiwanese people. Through your KMT, not through your president, through the party that's been blocking his defense budget. Stay with me. What comes next changes how you see all of this. Here's something the Beijing summit coverage buried. The KMT is not one party right now, it's two. Cheng Li-wun, the chair who flew to Beijing, she represents the faction that believes accommodation with China is the only path forward. On the other side, Taichung Mayor Liu Xiaoyan just came back from Washington, said the defense budget should be higher than what Cheng proposed. Same party. Completely different signals. Beijing just handed Cheng a photo op and 10 economic gifts. And that move didn't just split Taiwan, it split the KMT itself. Here's what this means for your life right now. 6 months from now, Taiwan holds local elections. November 2026. Every seat the KMT wins is one more vote to keep blocking that defense budget. One more signal to Beijing that the island is still reachable. 12 months after that 2028 presidential race. If KMT wins, that the $40 billion defense plan doesn't just get delayed, it gets buried. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. The chip factory keeps running either way. That's the thing. Beijing doesn't need to bomb it, doesn't need to blockade it. If the right president wins in Taipei in 2028, one who believes cross-strait peace means institutional arrangements with Beijing, that factory becomes leverage China already controls. No invasion required. The phone in your pocket, the car in your driveway, the supply chain your entire economy runs on, all of it repositioned, without a single shot fired. Beijing is not in a hurry. That's what makes this dangerous. They ran military exercises around Taiwan 6 times since 2022. They cut off every official communication channel with Taipei. They blocked Taiwan from international organizations. All of that is still happening. And then in the same week they pour tea, shake hands, announce 10 friendly measures, and smile for the cameras. That's not a contradiction. That's a strategy. And the real story isn't what I've shown you yet. Everything I've shown you, the handshake, the blocked budget, the 10 friendly measures, the split inside the KMT, that's the surface story. Here's what's actually underneath. Beijing learned something from 2015. Shaking hands with Ma Ying-jeou didn't keep the KMT in power. 1 year later, gone. So they stopped trying to win the moment. They started trying to win the decade. In 2015, Beijing played the short game. Big photo, big moment, lost anyway. This time, they're not playing for the photo, they're playing for the presidency. If Cheng Li-wun or any KMT candidate wins Taiwan's presidential election in 2028, here's what changes overnight. Taiwan stops pushing for the $40 billion defense build. The T-Dome air defense system gone. The long-range missiles pointed at the mainland, never ordered. The institutional arrangements with Beijing back on the table. No invasion, no blockade, no war, just a ballot. That's the play. Not the missiles, not the warships. The ballot box. And Beijing doesn't have to spend a cent. The question nobody in Washington is asking loudly enough is whether the U.S. strategy of pushing Taiwan to arm up is actually accelerating that outcome. Because every $1 billion Washington demands the KMT turns into a campaign ad. 3 scenarios from here. Worst case, 1 in 5. KMT wins 2028. New president begins institutional arrangements with Beijing. Defense budget shelved. U.S. loses its most critical anchor in the first island chain. No war. A slow repositioning that takes years to reverse. Most likely this is the one I'd bet on. KMT and DPP reach a compromise budget before November elections. Smaller than 40 billion, bigger than 12. Enough to keep Washington quiet. Not enough to change the military balance. The split inside Taiwan deepens. Beijing keeps waiting. Best case possible, but only if. The KMT's moderate wing gains enough leverage to reframe the party before 2028. Taiwan passes a credible defense budget. Washington recalibrates its pressure strategy. Beijing's window narrows. Bottom line, here's what you can actually do right now. 1. Watch the November 2026 local elections in Taiwan. That's the real, early signal. 2. Watch whether the KMT's moderate wing distances itself from Cheng before the presidential race. 3. Watch whether Washington changes how it frames the defense ask, because right now, that framing is backfiring. The strait is still. For now, that's exactly what makes this dangerous. Sources are in the description. Here's how I approach this. I cross-checked 12 years of cross-strait political data across 6 independent institutions: Atlantic Council, Asia Society Policy Institute, ISW, AEI, Brookings Institution, Foreign Policy Research Institute, and live reporting from SCMP, NPR, and Focus Taiwan. What I don't know, the actual private conditions Beijing set for this meeting that's not in any public record. And the polling data out of Taiwan moves fast. The numbers I cited are from March 2026, and this situation is changing week by week. Everything here is public data. The rest is above my pay grade. Somewhere in Taipei tonight, someone is plugging in their phone. Doesn't know the chip inside it is why 3 of the world's largest powers are repositioning right now. Doesn't know that a handshake in Beijing this week and a ballot in 2028 might decide whether that chip keeps getting made the same way. She's just charging her phone. That's exactly what makes this the most important story nobody's connecting. Do you think Washington knows exactly what's happening here and just doesn't have a good answer? Or do they genuinely not see how their own pressure strategy is backfiring? Because both answers are terrifying. And I want to know which one you think it is. Drop it in the comments. Save this. The next time someone tells you the Taiwan situation is about China threatening a military invasion, you'll want to show them what the actual move looks like. Now you know Beijing's real play is the ballot box, not the battlefield. What you don't know yet is how far back this strategy actually goes. Because the KMT and the CCP were enemies for 66 years. Civil war, executions, hatred. Something happened that turned them into this. That story changes everything you think you know about how Beijing actually operates. That one's next.